You don't notice it at first because she doesn't destroy you with shouting. She destroys you with a smile, with silence, with love that always feels like a test. And one day you wake up and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. You keep asking, "What's wrong with me?" But the real question is darker. What if you're not broken? What if you're being slowly erased? In this video, you will learn how narcissistic women destroy you in ways that look normal on the outside, and why you don't even realize it until your confidence, your energy, and your identity are already gone. You will understand the patterns, the traps, and the silent strategies they use. And most importantly, you'll finally understand why you've been feeling so drained, so confused, and so small. The first way she destroys you is by rewriting reality without ever raising her voice. She doesn't argue with facts. She argues with your memory. You bring up something she said yesterday and she looks at you like you're crazy. "I never said that." "You're imagining things." "You always twist my words." At first you think it's a misunderstanding. You try to explain yourself calmly. You try to be fair. You try to prove you're not accusing her. But the more you try, the more confused you become. And that confusion becomes your new normal. Because when someone keeps denying what you clearly experienced, your brain starts doing something dangerous. It starts doubting itself. You stop trusting your own perception. You stop trusting your emotions. You stop trusting your instincts. And when you don't trust yourself, you become easy to control. This is why you start feeling anxious even when nothing is happening. This is why you replay conversations in your head for hours. This is why you feel like you're always one mistake away from losing her. You're not too sensitive. You're being trained to question your own reality. And here you start to notice another detail. She doesn't just deny reality, she makes you feel guilty for noticing it. That's the second way she destroys you. She turns your needs into crimes. If you want clarity, you're controlling. If you want loyalty, you're insecure. If you want respect, you're too demanding. If you want basic honesty, she acts like you're asking for too much. And suddenly, you're the one apologizing for wanting normal love. You try to talk about how her behavior hurts you, and she flips the focus instantly. She sighs, looks away, and says, "So I'm the villain again." Or she gets cold and says, "I guess I'm just not good enough for you." Or she says, "You always ruin everything." And now you're not talking about your pain anymore. Now you're comforting her. This is the trap. She makes your emotional needs feel selfish. So you start shrinking yourself. You start lowering your standards. You stop asking questions. You stop bringing up issues. You start thinking, maybe I really am the problem. That's why you feel lonely even while being in a relationship. Because your emotions are not allowed to exist unless they serve her. But this is only part of the picture. Because narcissistic destruction isn't always aggressive. Sometimes it looks like admiration. The third way she destroys you is by putting you on a pedestal and then punishing you for falling off it. In the beginning, she makes you feel special. She makes you feel chosen. She says things that hit deep. "I've never felt this with anyone." "You're different." "You understand me." And you believe it because it feels like finally someone sees you. But later, that admiration turns into pressure. Now you have to earn her love every day. Now you have to prove you deserve her. If you have a bad day, she becomes disappointed. If you're tired, she becomes cold. If you're stressed, she becomes irritated. If you don't perform emotionally, financially, or sexually the way she expects, she withdraws. Not directly, not openly. She just becomes distant, quiet, hard to reach. And you feel it instantly. Because she trained you to fear losing her approval. This is where you start overworking yourself. You start becoming someone you're not. You become more careful, more pleasing, more perfect. You start thinking, if I just do better, she'll go back to the way she was. But she never goes back. Because that perfect version of her was never real. It was a hook. And now you're trapped trying to chase a ghost. That's why you feel exhausted all the time. Because you're not living, you're performing. And the situation becomes more complicated when you realize she doesn't only control you through distance, she also controls you through attention. The fourth way she destroys you is by giving you love like a reward, not like a choice. One day she's warm, affectionate, playful, almost addictive. The next day she's cold and unreachable. No explanation, no accountability. And your nervous system starts adapting to her rhythm like a prisoner adapting to a guard. You start checking her mood before you speak. You start scanning her face for danger. You start measuring your words. And the scariest part is, you call it love. Because when affection comes and goes randomly, it becomes more valuable. It becomes something you chase, something you work for, something you feel lucky to receive. This is why you stay even when you're unhappy. Because the rare good moments feel like proof that it can work. Like proof that she really loves you deep down. But deep down, what you're experiencing is emotional conditioning. A real example looks like this. You bring her flowers after a long week, hoping to reconnect. She barely reacts. She looks at them and says, "What did you do?" You laugh nervously. You try to prove you're innocent. She smirks like she already won, and you feel your chest tighten, because even your kindness is treated like suspicion. That's why you start losing confidence, because nothing you do feels pure anymore. Everything becomes a test. Everything becomes a trap. And now you start to notice the most painful part. She doesn't just control your emotions, she controls your identity. The fifth way she destroys you is by slowly separating you from who you used to be. She doesn't say, "Stop seeing your friends." She says, "I just feel unsafe when you go out." She doesn't say, "Don't talk to your family." She says, "They don't respect our relationship." She doesn't say, "Quit your goals." She says, "I miss you when you focus on your work." And because you care, you adjust. You cancel plans. You answer faster. You stay home. You shrink your world to keep her calm. At first it feels like sacrifice, like loyalty, like love. But months later you look around and realize you have no space left. No freedom, no peace, no people, no dreams. Just her emotions, and your responsibility to manage them. That's why you feel empty. Because you didn't lose her. You lost yourself. And here's the truth that hits the hardest. Narcissistic women don't destroy you by being too strong. They destroy you by making you feel like you're never enough, while making you addicted to trying. They don't want a partner. They want a mirror. They want someone who reflects their greatness, absorbs their chaos, and carries their emotional weight, while asking for nothing in return. And if you keep staying silent, you will keep disappearing. Because the longer you tolerate this, the more normal it becomes. The more you forget what respect feels like. The more you forget what calm feels like. The more you forget what love is supposed to be. And the moment you finally wake up, you realize it wasn't one big betrayal. It was 1,000 small cuts. And you didn't even notice you were bleeding. And that's exactly how it happens. Not with one dramatic explosion, but with a slow collapse you keep calling just a difficult phase. Now here's the sixth way narcissistic women destroy you. And this one is brutal because it attacks your dignity. She humiliates you, but in a socially acceptable way. Not enough for others to call it abuse. Just enough for you to feel smaller. She does it through jokes, through little comments, through comparisons. She might say it in front of friends. "He's so sensitive, don't take him seriously." Or, "You know how he is. He always overreacts." Or she laughs when you share something important and says, "Oh, that's cute." And you feel it. You feel that small sting in your chest, that quiet shame, that moment where your confidence drops and you can't explain why. Because if you react, you look weak. If you stay silent, you feel powerless. Either way, she wins. This is how she trains you to doubt your value in public. She makes sure you don't feel like a respected man, a respected partner, a respected human being. You start holding back your opinions. You start avoiding conflict. You start acting easier to be around. That's why you feel invisible. Because you're slowly learning to erase your own voice to avoid her reaction. But the situation becomes even more dangerous when you try to set boundaries. The seventh way she destroys you is by punishing you the moment you stop being useful. The moment you say no, she changes. Not always with anger. sometimes with coldness, sometimes with a sudden shift into victim mode. But the message is always the same. If you don't give me what I want, you don't deserve love. You say, "Please don't speak to me like that." And she responds, "Wow, so now I can't even be myself around you." You say, "I need honesty." And she responds, "I can't believe you don't trust me." You say, "This hurts me." And she responds, "You're always so dramatic." And suddenly your boundary becomes an attack on her. So you back down, you soften it, you explain yourself, you apologize. And that's how she trains you to abandon your own limits. This is why you feel trapped. Because your brain learns a toxic equation. Boundaries equal abandonment. And once you believe that, you will tolerate anything just to keep the connection alive. But here's where it gets even darker. The 8th way narcissistic women destroy you is by creating competition. Even when you're in a relationship. They make you feel replaceable. They make you feel like you're always one step away from being discarded. Not directly, not openly, but through small signals. She mentions other men casually. "He's so confident." She reacts to attention online in a way that feels disrespectful. She flirts innocently. She keeps certain conversations secret. She acts like your jealousy is the problem, even when her behavior is clearly crossing the line. And when you finally confront her, she smirks and says, "You're insecure." That word is poison, because now you're not allowed to have standards. You're not allowed to have self-respect. You're not allowed to say, "This is not okay." And you start competing. You try harder. You become more generous, more romantic, more patient, more understanding. You start proving your worth like you're in an audition. That's why you feel anxious all the time. Because love becomes a race you can never win. Now listen carefully, because this is the part most people miss. A narcissistic woman doesn't destroy you only through what she does. She destroys you through what she makes you become. You become the version of yourself that tolerates disrespect. You become the version of yourself that begs for basic kindness. You become the version of yourself that thinks love is supposed to hurt. And when you reach that point, you don't even need her to control you anymore. You control yourself. You silence yourself. You doubt yourself. You punish yourself. Because her voice is now living inside your mind. And the saddest part is, you still believe you can fix it. You still believe that if you love her harder, she will finally see you. If you stay loyal enough, she will finally respect you. If you stay calm enough, she will finally stop hurting you. But narcissistic love doesn't work like that. Because the more you tolerate, the more she learns she can take. The more you forgive, the more she learns she can repeat it. The more you explain, the more she learns she can confuse you. And one day you realize, you didn't lose because you were weak. You lost because you were good. You cared. You tried. You stayed human in a situation that rewarded cruelty. So what's the real insight? The real insight is this. Narcissistic women destroy you by making you abandon your own reality, your own needs, and your own worth, while calling it love. They don't break you in one day. They slowly convince you that your feelings are wrong, your boundaries are selfish, and your pain is your fault. And once you believe that, you will accept anything. But here's the moment where everything can change. When you start recognizing these mechanisms, your life will never be the same again. Because awareness is the beginning of freedom. You can't change her. You can't teach her empathy. You can't love her into becoming safe. But you can change what you allow. You can stop negotiating your dignity. You can stop explaining your pain to someone who benefits from it. You can stop calling survival a relationship. And the moment you stop trying to be understood by someone who only wants to control you, you start hearing your own voice again. You start feeling your strength again. You start coming back to yourself. And that is the real power. Not winning her back. Not proving your worth. But finally remembering that you were never the problem. You were just loving someone who needed you small.